If You Say Show recently interviewed Valerie Morse about her 2007 book, Against Freedom, The War on Terrorism in Everyday New Zealand Life. We asked her about her views on national security.
I'll just say, on one hand, there's a view of security that is promulgated by those who have power. And I think that I would describe that as one that engenders fear. It is about making people fearful, not only on an international level of their other neighbors. You know, we're meant to be fearful of Indonesia, we're meant to be fearful of China, we're meant to be fearful of a whole lot of sort of state actors out there, of what they could do. But also on a more personal level, it's about engendering fear in our communities, fear of our neighbors, that we must lock our doors at night, that we must have CCTV camera on every street corner, that we must have security guards roaming through our public buildings in order to keep watch on all of us. That's a particular view of security. But what it requires is that we give up a whole lot of our freedoms. On an international level, it means we give up freedoms to travel without being searched, without, extensive visas or retina scans or fingerprinting. That's a particular view of security that requires a whole lot of sacrifice on our part of our fundamental freedoms.
We think the threat to the environment from climate change is far more important now than the threat of terrorism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have been sold for the past 10 years on this idea that the war on terrorism is something that New Zealand needs to buy into. And there's been a whole raft of laws that have been passed, starting with the Terrorism Suppression Act, but continuing on through the Border Security Act, the Aviation Security Act, Telecommunications Interception Capability Act, a whole bunch of laws. And along with that, a whole bunch of money put into this notion of security. Meanwhile, all of the government's plans for doing anything at all about climate change have gone nowhere. So the Labour government had 9 years to do something about climate change. As of November last year, they had done nothing. They had done nothing to advance that whatsoever. And so New Zealand again stands on a precipice of a bleak future of rising sea levels, of ongoing degradation of the environment, the pollution of our seas, the pollution of our rivers and streams, the erosion of the land, continued loss of habitat, and a government who is now even more unwilling to do anything about that. So we have certainly entered an even more frightening age in that respect.
So Valerie, how do you see the future and our means of informing the public about global climate change and wider issues?
Well, I suppose that what I would say that I find enormously encouraging is that I think they cannot stop the wonderful tentacles of modern communication technology, so that people are aware of issues to do with global climate change and the plight of, for example, people around the world and the struggles that they are engaged in because of our ability now to find out about those things. Those things have been going on for a long, long time, but now they cannot stop other people from finding out about them anymore. So the bottleneck of the mass media has been broken. And I find that very encouraging. And I think that the realization about doing something about climate change has become, I would say, a mainstream idea. Now we have to figure out in our communities what we're going to do about those things. And I suppose for me, the focus of those things needs to be move beyond that as a role as a consumer, a passive consumer. It's not enough for us to say, oh, well, I'm not going to drive my car as much, or I'm going to change to these light bulbs. Those are all wonderful things to do. But frankly, those aren't going to stop global climate change. What's going to stop global climate change is a fundamental reassessment of how our global economic system operates. Because as it is right now, it is exploiting the world's resources, and not only the natural resources, but the human resources of people who are forced to work for slave wages for corporations making literally billions and billions of dollars. People are toiling away, wasting their lives. And we need to reassess all of that and figure out a different way of existing that is a way that allows us some measure of harmony in the natural environment in which we exist.